Hey everyone, welcome to episode 45 of VR Roundtable. This is Steve, and unlike last week, we have a full house of attendance. I am joined by Gary, by Anthony, and by Chris. And I think I'm going to speak not just for myself, but also for Gary, and that both of us were kind of bummed that our vacations got in the way last week, because last week was some really good news with all the Oculus price drop and the kind of the barrage and how it shook up the market. But nevertheless, we're back this week. So like usual, we're going to get into some news stories. And but first, Gary, how's it going?
Oh, it's pretty good. Yep. Just the usual stuff. I've played a few things this week, but yeah, like you say, last week I was away for a few days, so I've sort of tried to cram as many things into the last couple of days as possible to get some ideas on these games that we've got. We seem to have a lot of games to talk about, so we'll get to those later. Now,
since the show that you did last, you have some hardware acquisitions. Do you want to get into those now, or?
Yeah.
Two big purchases, not just one.
Yeah. Well, I picked up. I mean, this is peer pressure, really. I mean, this is your fault, Steve. I've got to blame you. But yeah, I picked up a 1080 Ti because I just found a really good deal on pre-owned 1080. So it's a Founders Edition. It's sort of the base model, but I found it for a good price and thought I'd throw up my 1070 on eBay, and I got an okay price for that. So the cost of the upgrade wasn't too significant, really. But also, like so many people in the last couple of weeks, Anthony included, I've also picked up an Oculus Rift. I could talk about that now, or I can leave it till a bit later on in the show. But
we'll get to the details. But yeah, you have a Rift, which is pretty exciting. Chris, what's going on in your part of the world? First, let me ask. No, we always talk a little bit from time to time about movies and stuff, but since the last show, Game of Thrones is back. Please tell me one of you guys watched Game of Thrones, because I'm on cloud 9. I absolutely love Game of Thrones. Anybody?
I haven't seen it.
Oh man.
I used to watch it.
I don't watch it either. This is no good for you, Steve, is it?
This is no good. I mean, Game of Thrones is so popular. I got a 1 in 3 shot here of at least one of you guys into it, but all right, that's fine. So Chris, anyway, how's it going?
Oh, it's good. Finally next weekend, it's confirmed I'll be at my new apartment. So yay.
I think I bought my first house quicker than it's taken you to get to this apartment, man. All right, Anthony, what's up?
Not much. Same old, same old. I got my Initech USB card. I think last episode I was waiting for that, and I got that, and it really improved things quite a bit. So that's good.
All right, cool. All right, well, let's just go ahead and hop into our first story. And this is probably the most recent story that we have, because I believe this came out yesterday, but the official trailer for Ready Player One was put up by, well, I guess it came out at Comic-Con. That's probably why they were releasing it now. And it's a pretty lengthy trailer. It clocks at a little more than 2 minutes. And having read the book, I read the book 2 to 3 months ago, so most of the content was fresh in my mind. And as I was watching the trailer, I was trying to think of it like one of the first things that I saw was the trailer park, the stacks, like how well that was shown sort of towards the beginning of the trailer, and his initial spot, in the van where he has his crappy VR rig and everything. So Gary, I know you've read the book too. What did you think of the trailer?
It was pretty good. I think it was a slightly different tone than what I was expecting. I felt like it was, when I was reading the book, I felt like overall the tone of the book was very, very light. And, all these, I was expecting to see sweeping vistas of the oasis and all this kind of stuff. And the trailer didn't really show too much of that. It was very dark in tone, which sort of contradicted how I expected it to be. But the plot in the book is very dark, I suppose. So they were going for that. But hopefully at some point in the film, you'll see just how great the Oasis is going to be and how well it's going to be represented. But yeah, I thought the trailer did a good job. And I'm really excited for this movie because it is going to be a big film. And just to shed some light onto VR. You know, we say this all the time. We want the general mainstream public to pay attention to VR, and I think this is one of the best opportunities we've got coming up in the next few months to show that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that you know, if I set my fandom aside, and again, I love the book just because I'm a VR enthusiast. If I set my fandom aside and think of what it may be like for Mr. John Q. Public, I think can put it on people's radar, and maybe, you know, I've always heard, we always read that one of the most complicated things about selling VR or getting people to understand it is that they can't fully understand it from watching like a video or a let's play or a review or something like that. And maybe by seeing the actors and everything sort of suit in, it'll help get people to understand what VR is and what we all hope it will be. Chris, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I read the book several years ago when I had my dev kit 1. So like seeing this trailer, I was kind of like expecting major screen door and stuff, but that's good that that's not in the movie. I think I keep forgetting the plot, like, cause it's been a while, but like, I think he meets other people, and that'll be interesting to see how like the VR social aspect of that is. And then, but yeah, I mean, it looks really good. One thing I'm kind of confused about is like, there's a scene where like there's all these people in like a real warehouse all suiting into virtual cars, but like, why are they all in the same warehouse? I don't know. Is that a plot thing I forgot about?
Yeah, I think that's the is that the Sixes? I think that's the huge corporation that got all those people.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then you had the big like car race, or whatever that was. It's not in the books. I'm thinking they're substituting one of the what do they call them, the challenges or whatever, you know, they have to do the 3 challenges to find the keys. And I think that may be, you know, because in the book some of those challenges they're reenacting movies and all the pop culture, and yeah, I don't know if they can do that in a movie. It would be kind of boring. So I think they've substituted with some sort of action sequence.
That's one thing I was going to ask you guys, actually. Having read the book, do you think they're going to have all these sections where, like in War Games, where they have to play through sections of that film? Do you think they're going to have that or not?
You know, I don't know, but I think they get it to an extent with all the pop culture, though. Like, because I saw Freddy Krueger and the DeLorean and all sorts of these references. You know, Rush was playing in the trailer. Like, I think they at least understand that part, and they're just going to have tons of those 80s and 90s references. Mostly 80s. All right, Anthony, let's get to you. You are the one person in our group that hasn't read the book yet. So not knowing anything about the story, what did you think of the trailer?
I thought it was pretty good. When the guy, one thing I'm kind of curious, and I guess this would be a spoiler for anybody that hasn't read the book, and for me as well, because I haven't read the book, but movies normally come away with a message at the very end. And just like my thinking would be that the message of this movie is like, don't live your life inside a bubble, get out there and live your life for real or something. I would think that would be like the end message. And it's like, isn't that kind of against VR if that is the end message? But I'm just off on a tangent there. Yeah. Anybody?
There's elements of that in terms of the plot in the book, but in all honesty, it doesn't really delve into that too much. Ernest Cline, the author, he doesn't really delve into, at least I don't think he does in that. He's sort of, that the book is really a testament to how great VR can be, and an escape to this world that's basically gone to shit. But there are aspects of that where he is meeting people who aren't necessarily representing themselves correctly and all this kind of stuff. But I don't know. It's been a while since I read it as well, so maybe that is in there.
And you know what's funny is, like, I've heard from so many people that you've got to read this book. You've got to read this book. I mean, all kinds of video game podcasts, way before even VR got big and all that. I've heard people talking about that. And I started thinking to myself, with this movie coming out, maybe I should go grab this book and read it before the movie actually comes out. But I was on a NeoGAF thread where everybody was talking about this trailer. And so many people came into that thread and talked just major shit about that book, saying it's just like geek nerd trash, like it's over the top, blah, 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 blah. And like, oh, that horrible book, that book is so overrated, blah, blah, blah. So it's just kind of weird to read all of that.
You know, the thing like, about the book, though, I've had people who aren't gamers, certainly aren't into VR, ask me upon finding out that I'm into VR. They go, "Well, have you read Ready Player One?" So that book has permeated the general populace to some degree, which is very interesting. And it also probably, I guess, what validated them enough to be greenlit to make a mainstream movie, and because I'm sure their budget isn't cheap. And one of the screenwriters, I don't have the quote in front of me, but he had said that the storyline or something to that effect was the script was one of the most complex that he had ever or that they had ever worked on. And I thought that was interesting, because, you know, finding out that this was going to be a movie and knowing the plot and everything, I'm very curious how they're going to condense it down and make it make sense in, you know, 2 hours, 2.5, maybe, if it goes that long. But does anybody have any more, anything else they want to say on this? Looks like that's a no.
You know what I'll say real quick. I kind of was a little disappointed with the headset itself, because I was looking at that headset and I'm like, the field of view cannot be that great with that headset. I was kind of hoping for something more that was almost like sunglasses that kind of enveloped you, and because I'm trying to imagine how the field of view would work on that.
Well, initially the character is very poor and has some really low quality stuff, and is able to procure more. So what you saw in the trailer, I'm pretty sure, like when he's in the crappy small space, that's his cheap starting out headset. So there's opportunity if the film decides to show a progression of technology. And just one other tidbit, the movie is slated to release early next year on March 30th, which ironically is my birthday. So that's some sort of sign that I'm supposed to go watch it on release, because I hardly ever go to the theaters to actually watch something. So I'm thinking I may do that. Me and my son will set up a time to do that. But moving on, the next story we have is that Oculus has come out and said that 4 of their games has made more than 1 million within the Oculus store itself, which I don't have the whole story up. But basically, that is a good sign, because it's, as far as I know, contrasting it to Steam, only 2 titles on Steam have done that, and that would be Job Simulator and Raw Data. And both of those titles are also in the Oculus store. And we don't know what those 4 titles are that Oculus has indicated, with the exception of one. And one of the 4 are The Climb, or at least that's all I could find. Anthony, did you see this? And do you know what any of the other 3 titles may be?
No, I don't know what the other 3 titles are, but I saw this, but I saw the thing about The Climb first, that The Climb, I guess, is their most successful game, period. And a lot of people were kind of thought, you know, that's kind of weird. The Climb, yeah, okay, I can see The Climb, but really The Climb? But if you look at the price of The Climb and you look at how it's been included in different bundles and packages and stuff, I think this is based on revenue, total revenue. So my guess is those other 3 games are more expensive games. But I have no idea what the other 3 are. But yeah, I thought it was kind of curious that The Climb is their most popular game. And then there was a discussion, like people got into a big discussion. Did you really like The Climb? It was kind of good, you know. It's just funny to see that discussion.
Yeah, because it has a sort of a high retail price at $50, I believe, is what it goes for when you're not buying it on any of their sales. And yeah, like it's one that I haven't played, and I know they did a touch update. So one of the things that I think that has made it successful is that it's been there pretty much since day one, if not actually on day one, and was made by an established developer, and apparently it looks gorgeous. And initially it was played with a gamepad, I guess, you know, prior to touch. So one of the benefits of it having been in the store longer than, say, Lone Echo, is naturally that it may sell more. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I have The Climb, and it's just so weird because it's like not necessarily like that good of a game. Like it's a little fun it's fun to climb a little bit, but I don't know. It's just not like a game everyone should go out and buy. But a cool thing that the article talks about is they used to invest like 100K, 200K, but they don't have to do that anymore because the companies will probably get paid just from the installed base. And then they said now Oculus is funding content in the 1 million to 5 million range, where the risk has shifted to. So like, I mean, that sounds good. More money being thrown at higher end games, I guess, you know?
Yeah, which is, you know, within the VR community is something that people are very polarized and split upon on that approach, but it is getting us a lot of games. So Gary, did you check this story out?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I think it's great. And, you know, at the very least, it will draw some kind of attention to the viability, really, of developing VR titles, because it's developers that are on the fence at the moment that are not necessarily, that are interested in VR but don't necessarily want to develop because of the perceived low sort of profit margin. It could swing them into it. And also in that article, I think, was it Jason Rubin who was being interviewed in parts of that article? I believe it was, but he was just talking about that thing that you mentioned, Chris. That stuck out to me as well, how they're funding bigger amounts of money now into these developers because that's where they've got to. And he was talking about something interesting as well, where he was saying that PC games, and this is something we've spoken about before, you know, we've got a long history of PC games. They've had a chance to sort of evolve over time. He was saying how we've not got that luxury with VR. It's being immediately compared to the Call of Duties and the Assassin's Creeds and all these AAA games. So he's very much on the side of funding developers and just getting the AAA games, the high quality, high production value games out there in order to entice more people into VR. And it's certainly one that we've spoken about before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because we have this suspicion, and I don't think any of us truly fully know, but that the Vive has outsold the Rift roughly somewhere in the ballpark of 2 to 1. Yet, in terms of at least $1 million makers, the Oculus Store has generated 4 to Steam's 2. So I just thought that was a very interesting dynamic when you parse it out. But one could say there are less titles available on Oculus, and those are higher priced and you know, a little more into them. But still interesting nonetheless. Moving on, I know, Anthony, you wanted to talk about some news coming out of Comic-Con.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly mention that I was going to mention this after the Ready Player One story, but forgot about that. But basically, Comic-Con, a lot of people will show like a certain VR experience there because you have all the people that are interested in the movie, but it's kind of like, oh, let's give them this more exciting VR experience. And they did that for Blade Runner, and they also did that for Stranger Things. And the interesting thing about Stranger Things is we had a 360 video for Stranger Things like a year ago or something. And I remember being a fan of the show. I tried the video out and I was like, this is kind of lame. And the interesting thing about this Stranger Things video, which it is available, you can go to YouTube, you can download it, but you really don't want to. But there is a Vive version where they actually made it room scale, and you're actually walking around Will Byers' living room, and you know how they have like the Christmas tree lights that are all over the house. You're kind of like following the lights, and you have to physically, or like you have to press on the touchpad, and you have to walk down the hallway and do certain things. And when I heard about that, I was like, wow, that sounds pretty cool. When are we going to be able to play that? Are they going to make that available on Steam? Is it going to come to the Oculus Store? Or is this something that was just an isolated thing just for people at Comic-Con and will never get to? Kind of hard for me to believe they would never bring that to Steam or something, but it hasn't shown up yet. And then the Blade Runner thing is interesting too in a different way. They had a VR setup, but they also did this really crazy Westworld thing where they had a bunch of actors, and they had like a bar from Blade Runner, and they had a bunch of actors that were all playing their roles like they're in the movie, like the movie is happening in real time. And then they let people into that experience, and they would have to like talk to the people and get clues and solve like a puzzle and stuff. Not really related to VR, but just curious. But what do you guys think about this Stranger Things deal? Do you think we'll get it on Steam in the next couple of days?
I don't know. I know that one point last year when you mentioned Westworld, I know that's not the same connection, but HBO, I guess it would have been HBO, they did a Westworld experience, and it never came to Steam. And I'm struggling off the top of my head to think of others, but I know that there have been others, and they don't actually get released to the public. And I'm not sure why that is. Part of it may be maybe to go up on Steam, you have to pay a fee. I don't know whether or not that's true. I know in a lot of these storefronts you can't just put something up for free and just let them take a cut. Again, don't know that it's true, but that may be one of the, if it is true, that may be one of the reasons why they won't invest in giving it out to the public. Of course, they could just make it available for download on a website. You know, we don't actually need to run it through Steam. So honestly, to answer your question, I guess I'm tangenting a little bit, but to answer your question, I 50-50 could not tell you whether or not I think it's going to come to Steam. If it does, I'll check it out because I am a fan of Stranger Things as well.
Yeah, I think it probably will come to Steam. Maybe not in the next few days, maybe in the next few weeks. I don't know. And I'm pretty sure that there now is a fee to put something on Steam. There didn't used to be, but they've imposed a new rule like in the past few weeks, I believe, where they're charging something like, I don't know, $500 or something like that, just to stop so much going on Steam without any penalty or anything like that. I don't know the ins and outs of that, and I could be talking complete rubbish, but either way, I think if there is a small fee, I don't think that will dissuade them from putting it on Steam, and hopefully we'll get it because, yeah, like you guys, I'm a fan of Stranger Things. Anything that part of it is this 80s reference as well. It's very reminiscent of these 80s movies, and anything that an author or a TV producer can do to pander to my nostalgic love of 80s stuff, then I'm going to like it, I guess.
I know in the past few years, like there's been all these trade show specific things related to movies and TV shows, and they just never get released. So I'm more on the no side than yes, because I don't know why they do that, but they like sometimes, you know, they tour the VR experience or try to make it more of an event. And they don't want the public having it. I don't know.
Yep. And that, I'm with you, Chris. I've seen so many not come out that makes me wonder, like, why wouldn't they release it? But at the same time, you know, we have season 2 of the show coming out. They could pocket it until close to that, and then, you know, try to build up some hype that way. Okay, well, moving on. That's pretty much the news, which is good because we have
I have one more little topic I don't think we really hit was.
Go ahead.
Jason Rubin in one interview and Nate Mitchell in another interview kind of made suggestions that there would be no Oculus Rift replacement for the next 2 years or some kind of, I mean, they didn't quite say it like that, but that was kind of the gist of it. And Gary, why don't I kick it over to you? Gary, did you hear anything about this no new Rift headset for 2 years, and do you actually believe it?
Yeah, I did hear it, and I mean, they were pretty categoric about it, really. When he was talking to Norm from Tested, he was saying Norm was putting some really, really specific questions to him about this, saying, you know, you say there's no new, you're not going to be replacing the Rift at the moment, but, you know, could it be that the Rift 2 could be classed as the new Rift and this kind of stuff? And Nate Mitchell was saying, no, we're talking about this actual piece of hardware, this Rift headset. So, you know, hopefully that's, in some ways it's good because I've just bought an Oculus Rift. In other ways, I want them to push the boundaries, you know, so it's sort of conflicting for me, but I think it's a good thing overall, I've got to say, because if you're jumping into a platform, you don't want it to feel like you're going to immediately be out of date within a couple of months or something like that. So giving this kind of reassurance to potential consumers is a good thing, I feel.
Yeah, because with the price drop, a lot of people were saying, well, I think this is happening because they're trying to. There was two things really that kind of surrounded the skeptics on the Oculus, the big sale that we're still in, and the price drop that will still be in place after the sale. One was that it's some sort of fire sale because they are about to release some new hardware, or going to announce some new hardware, and they just want to dupe people into drawing down their inventory. And then the other being related and similar in the sense that it was also a fire sale because they were concerned about a impending ZeniMax injunction, which was going to, ZeniMax was going to get a cut of every sale, which may or may not happen. I don't have a lot of confidence that will happen, but so I think they felt pressured, in despite of this kind of continual skepticism over the last week, to come out and say, no, we don't have any new hardware. Let's put that to bed. You can make this purchase with confidence that it's not going to be superseded anytime near term.
Yeah. Okay. But when he said that, he also kind of said that like the Rift is like an ecosystem. So I mean, even though there won't be new hardware for 2 years, it sounds like all the future software would be backwards compatible, which is kind of interesting for him to say. He kind of alluded to that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll go out on a limb and say there's absolutely no chance that we don't get a new Oculus headset by at least spring 2019. I honestly think we'll see one in 2018. But looking at the comments that he said, because I watched the tested video. I didn't see the Jason Rubin interview, but I watched the tested video with Nate Mitchell. And it is true, he was kind of questioned in certain ways. But like Chris is saying, he did kind of mention that it's like these games that we're making now, they're going to work great on Rift 2.0. I mean, the controller is probably going to be the same controller. It's not like they're going to go to gloves with the next set, or they're going to go to a completely new tracking system, probably. I mean, it's probably going to be the same controllers. And the headset is going to have extra features and benefits, but you'll be able to play Wilson's Heart. You'll be able to play Lone Echo. You'll be able to play Rock Band. All that stuff will work great. It'll just look better. So I don't see a problem.
No, I personally don't either, but I do get wanting to kind of assure the community. One of the reasons I don't have a problem with it is because I'm this big VR enthusiast. If I was a more casual type person, I think I probably would be a little pissed off if I bought a device and then a month later, like, oh, here's Rift 2, but that's inevitable. Like if you have that mentality, you can truly almost never really make a purchase. There's always something around the corner, maybe not from Oculus specifically, but the Microsoft stuff's around the corner, and then the Knuckles are around the corner, and then the LG's around the corner. So within the sphere of VR, there's always something around the corner. And I would say more so than console gaming, because you get the console cycles are, several years. You can pretty much bank on that. And even like PC hardware, graphics cards and things, they have a sort of a steady cadence to them. VR is just random, both in software and hardware. It's like, boom, this is out, go buy it now.
Well,
which is gonna go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I was going to mention you're talking about the consoles then, and even now it feels like everybody is moving towards this new kind of way of bringing out consoles. We're seeing the PS4 Pro and now the Xbox One X, and they are moving towards this cycle of bringing consoles out more regularly, but they're also backwards compatible, and any software will work on both sets of consoles. And presumably as we go on years and years and they iterate on these consoles, the ones that are the oldest will gradually get left behind and say, it's no longer compatible with this console. And I can understand that way of working with VR from a single company point of view, but you said it, Steve, it's not necessarily, it's coming out random at the moment with the VR because there's so many companies getting into it. We can't just focus on just 2 or 3 companies at the moment, like we can with consoles. We're focusing on a whole range of companies that are constantly bringing out new headsets, and that will only get worse. Well, better, I guess, is the better way of putting it, over the next few years.
Yeah. All right. Well, if no one has anything else in terms of news, we have.
There's one more thing. we forgot to talk about the lack of coverage of Lone Echo.
I was getting there. You stole my segue. You stole it. No, take it now. It's yours. Take it. Take it.
All right. So essentially, people were getting a little bit upset because the big companies like GameSpot and like all these review companies, IGN, didn't review Lone Echo or put out anything about it. And it's a pretty big release on the Oculus side of things. And these companies would, review things like, I don't know, like Edge of Nowhere, I think in the past, like they'd review VR games, but nowadays they don't seem to want to anymore. So that was just kind of interesting that there's a lack of people talking about it. But yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Well, I was going to let you talk about it, and you did. It's very, so there was a thread on Reddit on the subject because someone had made the post. Hell, it may have even been you for all I know, but someone had made that post on the Oculus subreddit and said, "What's up? Lone Echo is a polished game from an established developer, Ready at Dawn, which compared to." The people, making Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty, they're not that established, but they are a established developer. They've done they did the Order 1866 on the PlayStation 4, and they've done some Vita games on the PlayStation Vita. So they are an established developer. And the fact that they released this game and there's zero mainstream media coverage of it. So a lot of people have questioned that, myself included. And in a thread, there was and I couldn't find the thread quick enough, so I don't have it in front of me, but there was, I believe, a GameSpot editor and a CNET editor chimed in and basically confirmed what we all were suspecting, in that there's not enough traffic on their websites comparatively to Pancake gaming, and because of that, their bosses and the people running the companies have said, hey, don't put too much into VR stuff because it's not paying out for us. It's we're not getting that return on our investment of people spending hours into reviews and videos and things of that nature. And I believe IGN has also taken down their VR page. So Gary, were you aware that some actual established editors had come in and made that commentary, or do you have anything that you would like to add to this topic?
No, not really. It's just sort of a bit frustrating, as it always is, when games like Lone Echo are not getting any attention at all from mainstream media. I'm hoping to hear something from Giant Bomb. They, on their podcast, they talk about VR every now and again, although it's becoming a little bit more rare these days. But also, DLC, Jeff Kanata and Christian Spicer, they talk about VR a lot on their podcast, and they'll mention it, I'm sure. But with regards to IGN and GameSpot, the huge games media, it's just a constant apathy to VR. And IGN, I was subscribed to IGN's VR YouTube channel as well, and they've not put anything on there. I mean, I've unsubscribed now, so I'm not sure if they've put anything up in the last couple of weeks, but they hadn't updated that for a long time. And it all comes down to traffic and clicks, and there's just not as much interest in VR as them choosing to spend their resources in other areas. And it makes sense as a business, but it's frustrating as a fan of VR.
Yeah, so I ended up finding the comment. So I'm going to read a little something from Jim Thang. He's a GameSpot technical editor. So he more fits in hardware, but he was commenting on it. And he said, the reason we know VR content doesn't traffic very well is because we've tried many times. This applies to both videos and articles. Not only does it not traffic very well, but you constantly have to explain in the comments that it's not a fad like 3D TVs, which, so which the comment was an extra kind of thing, because you have so many, like what we've seen on NeoGAF, you have so many of the quote unquote haters that feel not, it's fine that it's not for them. They don't have one. They don't want to get VR, but they feel urged to actually go somewhere and type on their keyboards and comment negatively to insist that it's a fad. And I imagine that that would get tiresome. Us, you know, here doing VR Roundtable, like we are within the VR sphere, so we don't have a lot of people on the outside. But we have had a couple commenters that I got trudged into and had a little back and forth with, just that they seem so compelled to tell us that it's a fad like 3D TV, which, you know, is very tiresome. And if I was running GameSpot, I sort of understand why they wouldn't put any energy into that. Anthony, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much broke it down, but it's like you're saying, we talked about Giant Bomb and we talked about some of these other podcasts where why don't, like I was saying, you know, some of these guys have probably tried VR and they probably know VR is incredible. It's the future. It's the next thing we're going to go to. But at the same time, they have to kind of like not really say that out loud, because so much of their fan base, there is an active hate towards VR. And you look at sites like GameSpot and IGN and all these sites. These are classic sites that have been around for a long time. And a lot of these people too, there's also the people that they're not into VR. Why are they not into VR? Some of these people aren't into VR because they've always played their video games a very specific way. They sit on a couch, they hold their controller. That's what they do. They play a game for 2 hours. They can look at their phone. They can do this. They can do that. That's the way that they play games. And they don't see any, they want it to stay like that. And their fan base, a big portion of their fan base is the same way. And then the traffic thing, I'm sure that's a reality too. But I think it's a combination of those two from a standpoint where, you know, the traffic is pretty low. We could continue to bang away at this thing, but is it really worth it when we got so many people actively hating against it? Like they almost just don't want us to have it at all. So, you know, let's go ahead and shelve it. What's going to be interesting to me though, is VR is not going anywhere. We are in the Atari 2600 days. But eventually we're going to get to the Nintendo Entertainment System days. And then that's when everyone's going to have to start covering it. And I just wonder, are they going to be able to flip that switch and be able to cover it in the right way? Or could there be a situation where IGN and GameSpot and places like that, maybe they get pushed to the side? Maybe there's new blood that comes out, you know, so I'm hoping from an indie standpoint, I'm rooting for the indies.
Yeah, you know, like I think that switch that you talk about, I think that I don't think there will be an on-off switch. I think it'll be gradual. And so since the Oculus sale on NeoGAF, they've had a thread that has been, hey, Oculus on sale, $399 with touch, and it's been pretty resoundingly positive. And I've noticed no real haters. In fact, I can't recall a single hater coming in there saying VR is trash. And the price is a valid point. You know, I don't agree with it in a lot of ways that it's presented, especially in a world where you have people buying $700 video cards so that they can play games at 4K and 60 hertz. So I'm not sure price is a big thing, but it is for a lot of people. And it's one of the things that's constantly talked about. Really the two things talked about, price and games. And Oculus has been fighting that. They've had this sale, and I've noticed a subtle shift in at least it appears that way on NeoGAF in opinion. And I think that as VR becomes more mainstream, as the games become deeper, more AAA type experiences, and headsets get cheaper and clearer, I think it'll be a slope, so to speak, where there's more and more people are in it, that it won't be poof, one day there's a headset that comes out and all of a sudden all the problems with VR are solved and it launches with 50 incredible AAA games, and now GameSpot and IGN are going to launch a VR team and are going to give it the attention it deserves. Now, I think it'll be a slow avalanche, so to speak. So, okay, now I can do this. News is over. Finn, let's get into some games, because we have a metric ton of games that have come out in the last 5-6 days, and for all the platforms really. But the biggest, I'd have to say, has been Lone Echo, and then we've talked about Echo Arena a lot, so I don't know if we need to specifically talk about that, but we certainly can include any commentary of Echo Arena at this time with Lone Echo. But before I give my thoughts on the game, let me send it over to Chris. Have you played Lone Echo yet?
I have played Lone Echo. Yeah, I've probably played like 45 minutes to an hour of it so far. I'm probably going to jump right back in after this show. I have it paused. But yeah, it's just super great with the story and having a human character, and like, you know, it's animated really well. Like, that's what I noticed. Like, it feels really real that there's this other person talking to you. And you know, I don't really like how they introduce the mechanics. It gets a little boring when like you're in the story and then suddenly they're like, all right, let's learn how to use your scanner for 5 minutes. But I mean, once those tutorials are done, it's so intuitive. Like, you have your, you know, your scanner, your laser down here, like you just point your finger and touch your own arm, and you can, like, you know, it's haptic feedback because you're touching like your own hand. And like, yeah, the inverse kinematics is great. You don't really get motion sick. Like, it's really just a well-polished title for sure. It feels like you're in a movie, like, for once. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, that's, for me, that's one of the big signs of a high quality game, is if I feel like I'm somewhere, and that sticks with me even after I'm no longer in VR. And many months ago, Gary, you did a deep dive on establishing memories in VR. And I know almost every episode I mention the words Resident Evil 7. And I think, like, and I see this with Lone Echo as well, like I still have a feeling of those places, what it feels like to be inside them. And this spaceship in Lone Echo is creating the same sort of thing. I remember it. I feel it. Even, you know, now that I'm not in VR, I feel like it's somewhere that I've been. So, Gary, what do you think on the game?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I think it's great, and I also agree with his point on the tutorials. Just learning that the mechanics of the game isn't great, but you know, it's got to be done, and it does take you out of the story a little bit. But there's a film called Silent Running, science fiction film, and this game has definite vibes of that film. It's sort of well, it's called Lone Echo. It's sort of a very lonely game. You're there with one human character at the moment anyway. And just to divert quickly, that human character is very well rendered, very well animated, as Chris said, and it does make for, I mean, that character is probably one of the best looking game characters models that I've seen in any VR game at the moment. And, you know, Ready at Dawn, they've proved themselves in the past with great character models. So they've gone the extra step and really fleshed out this character and gave great animations. And she is believable. But this movie, this Silent Running, this has echoes of that, because there's one character really, and then there is periphery characters who are basically not humans. They're robots. And the thing that's interesting about this game is you don't feel like you're playing the main character in this game. You're observing the main character do her thing, at least where I am at the moment. I'm very early on in the game. And that's interesting to me, because it doesn't feel like that's something that I've really I've experienced too many times in games. You feel like you're a periphery character, and yet you're you know, you're the main character in your world, and yet you're seeing this story play out for this other character that you're watching. So it does feel very much like a film in that respect. But yeah, really good so far. I won't say it's my favorite VR game of the year or anything so far. I think it's got a lot to prove to get to that point for me. But what I've played so far, which is very similar to Chris, 45 minutes to an hour, very impressive. Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing more.
Okay, Anthony, what's your take on Lone Echo?
Well, I like the game a lot, and I think it's easily one of the best VR games we have from a pure showcase standpoint. But I will say that I can have two different feelings about this game. Like I can be like, oh my God, this is such an amazing experience. You gotta try this. It's incredible. It's like an interactive movie. Olivia, she feels like she's right there, like you're there with another human. That feels amazing. But I can go to the other side and I can say, because I actually did feel this at one point. So when I was first in the game, I really was totally blown away by the overall experience because they put you in there in such a way where the game plays out in real time and you never get like this, oh, this is a video game. You know, they keep you in this world. They don't put anything there to make you say, okay, this is a video game. Yeah, you do these little tutorial things, but you're a robot and it's like you automatically go into the tutorial. Like she's like, okay, well, you got to download this information before you do this because you don't have this information right now. So you do your little tutorial. They keep you in the game. And when I was first in there and experiencing the space station and Olivia and just moving around and just being in that environment, it was absolutely magical. And it's one of those kinds of things where you take the headset off and you want to go to Reddit and be like, oh my God, this is the most magical experience I've had in VR, and we've seen tons of those threads that people have done. But there gets to be a point where I'm in the game and I'm kind of like, okay, you know what? I'm floating along and I'm pushing a bunch of buttons and I'm using my blowtorch and I'm scanning things and I'm kind of like following her directions and she's, where's the aliens? Where's the guns? But you don't have none of that stuff. It's more of a slow, deliberate thinking man's kind of a game. And I really feel like this is as close as we've gotten to maybe. I don't know that there's a game that is closer to an interactive movie than Lone Echo. Now, this might not be your perfect interactive movie, but I don't know that there's anything closer. I feel when it's doing its job, like when it's doing the best thing and I feel good about it, it's like I'm in a sci-fi space movie, Gravity, whatever. I mean, I'm in one of these movies and I'm in the space station. I have this character. When you get close to Olivia, she feels like she's there. And the crazy thing is too, if you grab her and if you grab her, not like in a weird way, but you're like, because you're trying to grab on so you don't float away. So if you grab her, it's funny though, because one time I grabbed her and she was like, what are you doing? Or something like that. And it's like, it's cool that Ready at Dawn built that in. But oh my goodness, I mean, we could go down another rabbit's hole as far as that human character being right there. Imagine what this is going to do. That's why I don't think, how can VR fail? It's impossible. Wait till they have human characters like this that specifically appeal to all these different type of people out there where they've been dreaming all of their lives of being in a interpersonal situation with a certain type of person. And that's going to happen in VR.
We know what you're saying. We know what you're saying.
Apparently Olivia isn't his type. No, I find that I agree with you mostly. Like this is one of the most immersive in terms of total package, like fidelity, like graphically, it's probably one of the best looking games that I've seen. And when you look down at your hands and the almost the textures of everything, like it just feels very authentic. And they've absolutely nailed the locomotion. Locomotion is a big problem in VR, and they don't have a locomotion problem in this game really. And it's every game can't do this, unfortunately. So they haven't solved locomotion. Only zero gravity games could probably play this way, but all of it has come together to be a very complete package and one of the most immersive experiences that I've had. The way, like Chris said, the way you engage your torch and your scanner and turning your flashlight on, you're just tapping up here on your temple. It all is very engaging. And I think with that, though, comes the downside, as Anthony mentioned, that it would make it hard when everything feels so natural that they did include. It would make it hard to have a ton of combat other than maybe shooting a gun. But I am feeling that as I have probably, I think I've just gotten, well, I probably shouldn't say because it's spoilerish, but I believe I'm further along than Chris and Anthony, or I'm sorry, that Chris and Gary are. And I have hit a point where it's like, okay, I'm just going from interaction segment to interaction segment. You know, maybe I'm cutting the panel off and pressing some buttons or moving some stuff around. And as good as all that feels, and it feels so natural, it's also a bit, it can be shallow if you think of it. And I think it's a good thing that they have made it look so good and feel so good, because you almost have to focus and force yourself to think of what it's maybe missing in terms of gameplay. But it's very much there if you think about it. So it's not perfect in that sense. I will say right now that it's probably going to land without question in one of my top 10 titles of the year so far, maybe a little higher than that. So it isn't, I think, the best game in VR, but it is a damn good one. And who knows, the story may blow my mind. Right now, I've just kind of, you know, getting and settling into the story. So maybe something really cool will happen that changes my opinion. But still, it's a damn good game. And I think the developer probably felt this way too, to an extent, and hence Echo Arena existing. Like, you know, as they were making this game, like, well, we have no combat, we have no, you know, no competitiveness. You're not shooting anything, you're not punching anything, you're not flying any spaceship that has lasers. Like, you know, so they have Echo Arena that is part of this, and at some point during development, Oculus has decided, or you know, with separate funding, I guess, from Intel, to break Echo Arena out into this separate thing and give it away for free. But if we think of Lone Echo and Echo Arena probably as they were initially intended as a package deal, then that also kind of makes more sense.
Hey, real quick, has anybody had any performance issues? Because I can say that when I first got out of the space station, I don't think that's a spoiler, because I mean, you're on a space station, you're going to go outside. When I first got outside, my performance went to shit immediately. Okay. I mean, it was like going over here, like, zzz, and I had to freaking just back out of, I had to take the headset off, task manager, close this shit out. I had to start over. And then what I did was I got back in it. I didn't know that there actually was a graphics settings, but there is. You go to single player, and then you go into the the settings, and you can, so you can actually have different graphic settings for single player, different graphic settings for Echo Arena. And I put it to the lowest graphical setting. I went back in. Now everything pretty much works. But I did notice on Reddit, a handful of other people said the exact same thing. As soon as they got to outer space, their performance just went to crap. And I was just curious if that happened to any of you three guys.
I have gotten outside, and that's the part I kind of withheld. But yeah, you're right. Like the damn trailer, we knew months ago that you get outside the space station. So when I got out there, no, I haven't had any performance hitches. But I will say I do have a 1080 Ti, and since the last show I was in, I got a i7 4790K Devil's Canyon CPU. Just because I was tired of trying to understand why with a 1080 Ti I would have any frame drop. So running that very powerful combination, I haven't had any performance hitches. But also with that in mind, Anthony, Lone Echo's, and I'm reading this from Reddit, recommended specs are higher than usual. The recommended specs are an i7 6700, which you're probably fine with your 2500K there. But also a GTX 980. So it's kind of counter to Oculus having this lower minimum spec in general for VR that I think they've dropped down to a 1050 Ti. For this game,
they should probably, because in their store, there should be a little like thing that pops up like, do you have a 980 or better? You know, because if people with regular 960s, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so it does on their store page. It does give all the details, but no, it doesn't prompt you. Just like I don't think Steam will say, "Hey, you don't have a good enough graphics card to run this." They're gonna let you buy it. You know, we're gonna take your money whether you have the right hardware or not. But yeah.
Can I run on a tangent? I'm just upset that video games, especially VR games, can't just have like an adaptive setting. Like when it's like, oh, you're getting like 40 FPS, let's lower you to low. Like, you know, we all know you have to hit 90 FPS. So if you're not hitting it, the game should know how to scale. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the lab and a few others have this sort of adaptive rendering, don't they? On some, I think it's a Unity plugin or something that some developers can use, and that is a great idea because if you can just lower it down, I'd much prefer that rather than going in and trying to change settings and then seeing how far you can get through a game before it lowers performance, then changing settings again. It'd be great if if it's just a little bit more intelligent and changes itself.
Yeah, for sure. Anyways, I think this game looks great, and I haven't had any performance issues, but I'm in the minority, I believe, because it's a very graphically intensive game, and I think they've done a good job optimizing it. I don't feel that it's poorly optimized. It just needs some serious horsepower behind it, which is what we've been asking for, you know, as VR enthusiasts. We've been asking for higher resolutions and to get away from these simple NES or Super Nintendo level graphics. Well, they've done it, but you need more juice to pull it off. Let me send it over, Gary. What's a game you want to talk about?
Well, I could talk about, there's a few that I've played. As I say at the beginning of the show, I've been away a few days last week, so I've tried to cram in as many games, but anything I talk about will be sort of very, very early on in my opinions, very first impressions. But what I wanted to talk about is a game that's coming out, I believe, on the 27th of July. This is called Just in Time Incorporated. And this is a game where you're placed into sort of certain situations. It's got a little bit of humor about it. I think it wears its influences on its sleeve as well. It's influenced by sort of Job Simulator in terms of aesthetics, but also Superhot in some ways, just in how the game actually plays. And what it is, you're working for this company who tries to help people out that have been unfortunate enough to either die or various things really, but you're placed into these situations where time moves very slowly and somebody is in danger and is about to get killed. You then have to work out using various means and objects within the local environment a way to prevent them getting killed. And like I say, I'm very early on in this, but I think, first of all, I think it's very original, even though it's taking certain aspects from sort of Job Simulator and Superhot. I think it's very original in its concept overall, and it's an interesting thing. It's not something I've seen in VR. It's not even something close to what I've seen in VR, and it's a great little title. I'm sure some of you guys have tried this as well.
Yeah, I've played it. I've also recorded a Let's Play, but it's going to be held for launch day at the developer's request. And it's I've been critical over the last couple months about these sort of indie feeling simple games. And I think my opinion still stands, but something about this one I liked. Not sure, which is ironic because I agree with you. It is influenced in part by Job Simulator, and I didn't like Job Simulator. So, but the fact that I like this one, which is odd. And I think it may be some of I always talk about something having a purpose. And in this game, you have a purpose. You work for this insurance company, and you got to go into these scenarios and solve them so that the company doesn't have to pay out a claim. So it gives you a reason for doing this, and you're this superhero time manipulating State Farm guy, discount double check, whatever you want to call that stuff, and it works really well. Like it's a puzzle game at its core, and I had fun with it. It's really, there's not too much to say in that sense and to describe the game beyond it's a puzzle game where time is slow and you have to solve a scenario. So it sort of is what it is, but it's fun, it's creative, and I think it's worth checking out. I will also say there were a couple of things that annoyed me, and I played this on my Vive, and I don't know if it's because I think I came right out of Lone Echo and checked this game out, but to push a button, it won't just let you push it. You know, it's kind of counter to what we were talking about in Lone Echo, where you just tap your wrist and you do something. In this game, you have to like push it in and click the trigger, and that felt unnecessary. And it kind of annoyed me a little bit. And then there were a couple scenarios where I solved the situation, but had to wait for the character. In this one particular case, your insuree, I don't know what you call it, but he is a arms dealer, and he got caught, and you have to rescue him. And I had him rescued, but he had a 60-second slow motion run to the car before, you know, it would actually register that I cleared the level. So like once you've cleared all the hurdles, it'd be nice if you could squeeze the trigger or do something and let it kind of go into normal time, because I had to sit there and wait. So they're minor annoyances, minor quibbles, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, but it's things that I think the developer could rectify. Anthony, I know you played this one.
Yeah, I played it. I didn't play it a ton because I wasn't sure we were going to be able to talk about it on this episode, but I did check it out. And everything that I played, I really liked it. And the similarity to Job Simulator is not like the actual gameplay really isn't Job Simulator. It's just some of the little production values are very similar. Well, the one concern I have about it, I have no idea what the price is of this. I looked on Steam and there isn't a price right now that I'm seeing. So I don't know what they're going to be charging for this. The other thing I'm kind of wondering is how many scenarios there are. And if you play through all the scenarios, what is the grand total play time? Because when I was trying it, I probably played this for maybe 45 minutes, and I got through a lot of scenarios. Like there's different rooms that you go in, and you start off in like the training room. I went through all of those scenarios. Then I went into the next room. I almost did all of those. And my only concern would be like, if this is one of these games where there's like 2.5 hours of content, you can kind of blow through it. I'd be a little worried there, but I do love the fact that it is vastly different from everything that we're playing in VR. It's like you're either playing a wave shooter or there's like all these different categories of VR games, but they're kind of limited. And this one is unique in its execution. And there's a lot of nostalgia here too. If you're a fan of the 80s, they do a lot of little, did you notice that, Gary? There's some like 1980s nostalgia in this.
I didn't see any of that, but only because, I mean, like I say, it's very first impressions, what I played of it. So yeah, if it's there, then I'll look out for it.
It's kind of like in the titles of the little things that you're doing, like when you go to your different assignments, there's titles, and the titles will kind of have a theme to it, you know, and one of them is kind of like Rambo or something like that. So it's just, I noticed a few of them had kind of nods to the 80s, 90s.
So I just checked while you were talking, because I also didn't know the price, and it's not posted on the Steam page, but I clicked into the discussion section off of the Steam page, and someone asked, what's the price going to be? And the developer kicked back and said at launch, the game will be $20. And in terms of scenarios, I don't know, like when you're in that main landing page, I don't know if any more areas are going to open up, but I counted, because I had that same thought you did. I counted 13 little floating tablets that you could walk up to. And that's
a good price. I think that's a good price for this game.
Yeah. So yeah. I think it may be a touch high. I would probably feel better if it was 15, but maybe they'll have a launch discount or something as well. Hopefully the $20 isn't with a launch discount and that it's priced higher. But we'll have to see.
It's interesting though. It's like if whenever I hear 1999, it's like, oh, okay, 1999. I can kind of feel you there. When you start going to the 24.99 and the 29.99, and then if you go to the 34, it's like a total. You know, each stage is a different ball game. And I like if developers keep their prices a little lower. I mean, I know it's hard. It's got to be incredibly hard, but I always feel better when it's just a little bit lower.
Yeah, Chris, did you play this one?
No, I didn't get a chance to play it.
Okay. Well, let me send it to you then. Why don't you pick something else that you've played, if you've played anything other than Lone Echo?
Did I talk about this isn't like anything new really, but did I talk about Rec Room Quests last time, Anthony? I don't think I did, right?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Is it the Jumbotron one or the Quest one?
Jumbotron one, yeah.
Okay. Or is that the same thing?
it's the same. There's two different quests in there. There's like a Jumbotron one and like a different one, but I don't know why I'm just up. I've been doing so much social VR stuff lately because my friend has a Rift. I talked about that last week a little bit, and Rec Room's something we kind of keep going back to because it's these quest modes that are like almost impossible, so you have to keep doing them over and over again, and like, you know, ducking down. If you get shot once by a robot, you die, and like you have to get revived by like high-fiving your friend. And it's just cool because it's like a little free quest mode thing. And I don't know, for some reason that's something I've been playing a lot with him lately. We're just like, want to shoot on Rec Room, like the friend system's easy, they have a watch on your hand and you can see your friend list and everything, so it makes a good use of UI and mechanics. But I mean, I've just played that in Lone Echo. I feel upset. I was gonna play some raw data last night, but I wasn't feeling too good, so I'm gonna play some raw data updates, and I can update everyone next week on the new updates that came out for that.
Okay. Anthony, you want to pick our next game?
Yeah, okay. You know, I'll talk about real quick. Actually, raw data, I'll just say real briefly. I did go into raw data. I tried the new character, but I didn't try the new level that they made. I tried a new level for me, but I didn't try the new level that they made. I accidentally tried the wrong one. But what I will say about raw data, all that shimmering that you would see everywhere, it's gone now. They switched to forward rendering, and it works better. I don't think they have shadows activated, and some people were claiming there's no shadows now, which that sucks. But I thought everything looked great. I thought it looked better, and I thought it ran better. So I'll just say that.
I tried just quickly as well to jump in there, because I tried it early on today as well, and it looks a lot better. And also, I was trying the free movement, because last time I played it was teleport only, but now it's got a free movement mechanic, and that's really good as well. Just to see that they've got some options in there.
You know, I tried the free movement real quick. I did not like the feeling of it. Like, it didn't seem smooth to me. And then the game kind of crashed on me and wouldn't give me a menu to select, and I had to back out of it. So I don't know if it was.
But haven't you heard every game must have free movement? Apparently, you're doing something wrong.
Well,
every game must have free movement.
Has Mage's Tale had an update as well? Because I tried that, but I couldn't find the free movement section to try that out.
As far as I know, it did get its patch, but I haven't been able to give that a go.
No.
It'd be interesting to think, like, compare every free movement out there. Who made the smoothest, most nicely flowing free movement? But anyway, one game I will mention is Superhot on PlayStation VR. We got a code for Superhot, and I thought, well, you know, I've played this on the Vive through Revive. I've played it on my Rift now through just through Oculus, and then I've also played the Steam version on the Vive that came out not too long ago. So I've had a lot of experience with Superhot on different platforms, and I was really curious to see how it was going to work on PlayStation VR, because I thought, you know, these Move controllers are not that great. It's only one camera. How are they going to pull this thing off? It doesn't seem like it would work. And I tried it out, and I was really blown away by it. I really believe that this is going to be a big game for PlayStation VR, like, going forward. Like, I can see they should advertise this game, maybe even put it in a bundle, a new bundle free, because it works like 90% of what you get from the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive version. I would say 90% of that game is there. And that's amazing to be able to just do that on a PlayStation VR. And it looks pretty much the same. You're grabbing knives, you're throwing knives. The only weird thing about it is, okay, so on the PlayStation Move, you have a trigger and then you have your move button. And so trigger is to like grab guns and stuff, but letting go of the gun, or like if you want to throw an object, you got to hit the move button and then throw it. So it's that took me a few minutes to get used to, but once I got used to that, I was throwing things perfectly fine, shooting things. The only trouble I ever got into is like I'd be shooting something over here like this, and my aim would get like, maybe I just went a little bit out of the cone of vision of my PlayStation VR camera. But man, Steve, have you tried this, and what do you think?
Yeah, I also have a video of that up on the channel, because I booted it up and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna turn the camera on and get my initial reaction to it, having spent so much time with it on both the Rift and the Vive. And I agree with you. It exceeded what I thought it would be on the PlayStation. They have the full-fledged Superhot VR experience. The game plays the same way, it operates the same way. It doesn't look as sharp, and I found out after I initially played it that the developers do not have a PS4 Pro mode enabled, and that they will have that out. So it should look better than it currently does if you have a PlayStation 4 Pro. And again, I'm going to agree with you, and I think I said so much in the video I made as well, is that it doesn't feel right pushing the move, the big button in the middle to throw things. It took me a while to get used to it, and caused me to die a few times. And I don't know why they did that, because they could just release the trigger. I don't know. I'm guessing there has to be a reason they did it, but it was jarring for me, and I almost was going to go boot it up on the Rift or the Vive to see if it did the same thing, and that maybe I was just misremembering, because it's been several months since I played Superhot now. And I thought, well, maybe I'm just misremembering something. And, you know, so many games have come out since then that handle grabbing and throwing better. But it sounds like, no, that you had the same gut on it. So I'm going to move on. And another game, keeping it with PlayStation VR, that I played was Archangel. And this is a game that is coming to Steam, and I know you'll be able to play it on the Rift. I'm not 100% sure if it's coming to the Oculus store itself or not, but either way, it's coming to PC VR. But right now, it's available only on PlayStation VR, and it will be that way for a couple of weeks. I think till early August is when it comes out for PC VR. And what we've known about the game for a while is that it's an on-rails shooter. And, you know, if you're a PlayStation VR fan, you know, you are maybe not against that, having been able to play Rush of Blood, which is still like one of the fondest memories I have in VR. I just think Rush of Blood was awesome. So it maybe wouldn't scare you, but if you're a PC VR enthusiast, on rails, like, it's gonna, you're like, oh man, that kind of sucks. And I was sort of in between, because I knew you could have a good on rails game. So I get in this game, and what it is, it's a mech shooter, and it's got sort of a long opening cutscene, some tear-jerking moments. I won't spoil those, but at its core, you're in some point in the future, and there's new technology, and you're rebels, and you're at war with somebody else, and it's a shooting mech-based war game. So it's cliche as hell, but it's good enough in that at least it's there. So it gives you purpose, that purpose I always talk about. And I find that it doesn't bother me that it's on rails at all. because what they did is, as we all know, locomotion is a problem. And I think the developer, kind of like Lone Echo, when they set out to do the basic concept of their game, they figure, well, how can we work around this locomotion issue? And what crap, I don't know the name of the developer, but what the developers of Archangel did is they put it on rails, so you don't do any locomotion, but they made everything else that you're doing busy and complicated. Like, you don't have time. If they gave you the ability to locomote in this game, you don't have the time to do it. You couldn't, because you're trying to you shoot with your two motion controllers, your two move controllers, like you naturally would. You squeeze the trigger, you're doing shots, you got different rockets and machine guns. But if you press other buttons, you have a shield that can only be up for a small period of time, and you're completely ambidextrous in the sense that you're having to micromanage both hands. And unlike Rush of Blood, I found that I couldn't just thoughtlessly use both hands in this game. It was, I had to think more about it. So you're constantly busy, and I find myself taking damage, and I've died a lot in this game. It's actually a very hard game, at least for me. And so they've compensated for the lack of locomotion by having some complexity and some challenge in gameplay. And this was a big surprise for me. I actually really like this game. One other thing that I'll talk about, you're in this mech, so you have the sense of scale. The first time you see the mech, I think they say it's like 6 stories high, and you look up at it and you're like, wow. But when you're in there, you're holding these 2 wireless controllers in the game. You're holding wireless controllers in real life, but you're holding in-game representation of these wireless controllers. And as you move around, you see your big giant mech arms on the outside make these same movements. So it has pretty decent kinematics in that sense, but the sense of scale looks really cool when you move your arm and you see this giant arm that's probably 20-30 feet away from you, punching things and shooting things. And I think that is also why I am having right arm left arm kind of disconnect with it, is because instead of watching my actual human character's hands in the game, I'm watching the mech's arms, and that creates a little bit of a disconnect, but it feels very authentic. So I know Chris and Gary, you guys don't have PlayStation VR, so you haven't checked it out. So I'll kick it back to Anthony. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I played this too, and this is Skydance Interactive. It's a company that, I'm trying to remember, but I believe they're a company that has a lot of money behind them, and they're really aggressively going after like the VR thing. And there's a lot of high quality developers that they got together that are part of Skydance Interactive. And this is supposed to be a big deal. Like this is going to be a big game, right? So it came to PlayStation VR first. It does have this little exclusivity window, which is kind of weird. It's like a couple weeks, 3 weeks or something like that. The one thing I will say when I was playing it is, in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, man, I kind of want to wait till this comes out on Steam or Oculus, just because I know it's going to look a little bit better. Although it does look really good on Pro. When I was first playing it, I actually was playing it with my DualShock. I had my Move controllers turned on. I had just played Superhot, and then I went into Archangel, and I thought it was a Move game as well. And then my Move controllers just immediately turned off. And I was like, oh, maybe this is a DualShock game. And I actually started playing it with a DualShock. Then later I was reading some story somewhere, and the guy was like, yeah, I really like the Move integration. I'm like, what? And I went back into the game, and then I went into the options, and it says motion controllers. And then I selected that, and then yay, my motion controller started working. And then, yeah, I had, you have these in-game wireless controllers, and that's always really good. Anytime a game gives you that, it adds to the presence factor, like what Steve was talking about, because you do have the giant arms on the outside, but when you see that and it's clear, it looks good, it moves accurately with you. Graphically, again, I thought it was really good. One thing that was kind of weird to me, though, I mean, it's not weird, it's pretty normal, but I felt kind of weird about it. And I don't know if, Steve, if you felt weird about this at all. There's these little human characters that are kind of like in silhouettes. And you'll see them on buildings and you'll see them down on the ground. And they're small because you're this big, gigantic robot. And you just start, you just start gunning these little guys away. And you know that it's not like you're fighting an alien menace. These are human guys that you're just blowing the hell away. Did that feel weird to you at all?
Well, you're at war. So to be fair, like they all have like RPGs and they're trying to kill you. So it's like you're not just shooting down women and children. But I think it's one of the things that they were trying to go for. They were trying to maintain that sense of scale. And I commented positively about the sense of scale when you first see the mech and the arms. Where I feel that they didn't achieve a good sense of scale is the mech in relation to these cities and these war-torn areas that you're in, because the buildings and you come across a few like highway overpasses and you have to like punch your way through them, and then the humans and the other aircraft and tanks that you're against, like the sense of scale is lost. Like they're small. You can see that they're small, but I feel like you lose the sense of scale. So that's one critique that I have, and I don't know how they would maintain that. Maybe there's not enough sort of focal depth ability within, you know, for in their engine to do that right. But no, I felt no issue shooting down the bad guys because they were bad guys and they were shooting rockets at me. So screw them.
Yeah, no, I hear you. One of the coolest things about the game to me is actually this storyline that they have going on, and the voice work guy, like the main actor, the main character that you're playing, this pilot of this mech that you're in, the whole story that they go through at the beginning, the tear-jerking story. I won't spoil any of that. What I will say though is this voice actor is over the top in such a way that I love it. I love the way that, like, when you're about to die, some of the stuff that is said, like even when you die, you still hear some like audio of people talking and stuff, and it's just hilarious. I just love it.
Yeah, it's pretty cheesy in that sense, and I think I don't know if it's just budget issues and the fact that they, you know, weren't hiring super well-known voice actors, or if they actually intentfully made it somewhat cheesy. But either way, it does have a little bit of a all your base are belong to us type of corn factor to it, which is cool, you know. So Gary, I'll send it to you. You have something else you want to talk about game-wise, or you just want to talk about your impressions on the Rift? There are more games that I would like to get to, so you know, we can talk about the Rift here in the middle. However you want to do it's fine with me.
Yeah, what I'll do, because there's 3 other games. I mean, I don't want to sort of cut these games off or anything because they're smaller titles. So, I mean, what I'll do, I'll talk about these 3 games, but hopefully we'll get a chance to get back to them again in another show and give a bit more of an impression on them. But the first one I'll talk about is Castle Wars. So, again, on all of these, we did receive keys from the developers. And Castle Wars is a real-time strategy, but it's quite a basic one. The mechanics within it are very, very simple. The game itself is very simple, very easy to pick up and play. I feel almost like it's sort of aimed maybe towards younger players or casual players even. But I had a lot of fun with this. I mean, I'll pass it back to you, Steve, very quickly, because I know you played this as well. What did you think of this?
So, like, I have found that traditionally I have not been a strategy game fan, like my whole life. Real-time strategy has been a genre I could just give 2 shits about. But in VR and the thirst for software, there have been a few strategy games. I guess the first that I played was on PlayStation VR, and it was Tethered. And I found that having the VR and the 3D and the holodeck, so to speak, that I actually enjoy them now because it's doing something more than just, you know, on a monitor. So I'm saying all that because I'm now a fan of strategy games, and that's what this is, a real-time strategy game. But what it does different is that it puts you, instead of being this you know, sort of looking down on a small world from, you know, either feeling like you have that you're God, or you're looking down on a tabletop of toys that are playing. It puts you in an actual, I guess, human scale or a person scale, and it puts you right in the battle. And so I thought that was a very interesting take. And you have really, though, it's not so much. I found that what I don't like about the game is that there wasn't much strategy, and I guess it's what you were alluding to when you said it was so simple. Is you have like many of these types of games, you have credits or currency or energy or something that you're accruing as the battle goes on, and then you're able to deploy combats. You either deploy big soldiers or mages, or I think some paladins, and there's 6 to 8 options of things that you could deploy to go out and fight this battle. But what I found, at least in my time with it, that it didn't matter what I did. I would just randomly choose things and they would go out and win. So it wasn't hard enough. But I do like, and you know, there was no backdrop. You boot the game up. I don't recall. I'm assuming you hit start or something to that effect. And then once you hit start, like, you're just there, and the battle starts, and you have this palette of options in front of you, and you go. So you don't know who you are. You don't know who your army is, what they're doing, why they're doing it. And it's really sort of a tower defense in that sense. Is you have a base or a castle on one end, and the enemy has theirs on the other, and you have your troops that you're sending out from each of your bases, and you meet in the middle, and one side pushes the other one back and takes the base or takes the castle, and that's it. So it was missing something. Like, I like what they were going for. I like being in the battle and having it from that perspective as opposed from a top-down perspective. But it wasn't challenging. I couldn't really make sense of what I was doing in terms of what each of my choices, in terms of whether I'm releasing a mage or a big warrior or whatever. Like, there didn't seem to be much of an impact on which of those that I was releasing. So I didn't have any feedback. There wasn't anything to learn, so to speak. So that's my critique with it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is an early access game as well, so I'm hoping that as it progresses through early access, they're going to add some mechanics into it. But even now, it's a very nice looking game. I will say that it looks great, and mechanically it's sound. It's just a little bit too basic at the moment, I'd say. The other one I wanted to talk about is called Space Tours, and this isn't a game. It's an experience where you can just go around and explore the solar system. But this is pretty good, actually. Again, very, very polished. I mean, again, basic, but polished and graphically very impressive. I'll say it again, you know, these are all very, very early impressions, but there's not a great deal to this. You can go and explore different planets within our solar system, and this is absolutely fantastic for demoing to people. I think this will be a great introduction to VR. And, you know, I went around to various planets, and Saturn is probably the most impressive planet in our solar system. It's got the rings, and you can look out of this little capsule pod that you're exploring the solar system in, look out of this window and see Saturn right there. And it looks sharp, clear, and really well done. For what it is, I think it's probably sort of the best in its class, really. But it doesn't do anything particularly impressive for VR enthusiasts and fanatics that have been around VR for a long time, but very good for demoing and a good first VR experience.
How does it hold up graphically? Like, I didn't get to this one, and I passed it over only because I was playing Lone Echo, and I was concerned that I would hop out of Lone Echo, which I believe you're also at Saturn. I'm not sure. Yeah, a planet that looks like Saturn, if not. So I was concerned about, you know, coming from Lone Echo, which had obviously more money thrown at it, was done by a developer that's known for graphics probably above anything else. And I was concerned about hopping into this one and having just a sort of a unlucky happenstance of going from that game to this game. So graphically, how does it hold up? Like
Saturn itself is a planet rendered within this experience compared to Lone Echo. It perfectly stands up. I mean, it looks great. Saturn as a planet looks great. You know, Ready at Dawn and Lone Echo, they specialize not just in graphics of scenery and environment, but also in character models. And obviously there's no character models within this experience, but in terms of scenery, it looked great. It really did. One of the most impressive looking, because we've seen these solar system tours and things like that before, and they seem to be using sort of various assets that they've got from different places. But this does a great job, and I think this is one of the better looking experiences in this kind of genre, really. Yeah.
Hey Gary, real quick, if you were demoing this to somebody, would you have them sit or stand?
It's standing, really. Yeah. You'd stand up in this. I guess you can play it sitting down. You're standing up in this very, very small capsule, and then you can just look out of the window and click on a planet that you can see in the distance, and just drop it into this place, and it'll warp you to that planet. But yeah, it's. I think presumably it's intended to be a standing experience. And the very last one I want to talk about, I don't know if anybody else has got anything they want to add, but this is another, we got a key from the developer for this one, Dr. Kvorak's Obliteration game. This is another puzzle game, really. It's one, I mean, again, I've said this a little bit about Just in Time Incorporated, but this game in particular, probably even more so, is a little bit more original and very imaginative. I didn't spend a lot of time with it, but if you're a fan of puzzle games, I think you can get a fair amount out of it. You're not, what it is, it's set in an almost like a science fiction type game show, which is run by this guy who's, I mean, he's sort of an evil genius, but he's running this game show, it appears to be anyway. And you control these little alien characters that you have to navigate through these levels. And there's various ways that you can do this. You don't control these aliens. So you're looking down on this level, but you don't control these aliens directly. You point and click where you want them to go. And then they have to do various tasks based on where you're pointing and clicking in order to get to the next section. But again, it's not something I've seen done a lot or at all in VR before. This puzzle game really does, it's original in that sense. One thing I want to say, if you go onto the Steam page of this game and look at the video that's promoting the game, it doesn't do a good job of promoting it. I don't think the video does it any favors at all. I went on before I played it and looked at the video, and it really didn't entice me to play it. But once I was in there, I found myself getting a little bit more involved in the game. And again, I'll probably say this is mainly aimed at a younger audience. I'm not too sure on the price of it. I'll check that in a second. But so I don't want to say you know, go out and buy it or anything like that. You have to be very specifically interested in puzzle games of how this works mechanically. So maybe watch a few videos and see if you think this is for you. But it's well done, I will say that, and I'll try it a little bit more because, again, this is early days. I'll try and revisit all these games that I've spoken about today. I'll try to come back to at some point in the future because I don't want to sort of do them injustice and sort of just dismiss them without giving them a proper chance.
Yeah, so the game comes out in 2 days. I could not find a price on it, and I hopped into the discussion forum on Steam, and nothing was posted there that I could see. So I'm not sure how much it's going to go for. Now, I also am about 90% sure the game can be played outside of VR and with a gamepad. So it is a game designed for both. And I'll pretty much echo everything that you said. It is a puzzle game, sort of platforming. It has some platforming elements. From a VR perspective, it reminds me a little bit in the way that you control the little alien. It reminds me a little bit of Wayward Sky in terms of control, but in terms of aesthetics, sort of like a maybe a Ratchet and Clank, you know, with the aliens and the colorfulness that they represent. So it's a I got stuck when I played it and didn't know how to pass. I didn't know how to go any further. So there were some things that weren't obvious or weren't very clear to me. But it is again, it's a puzzle game. It's something that is unique and different. And really, I think it'll my opinion of the game will really come down to how much it'll cost, and we don't know what that is. If it's $10, well, okay, it's not bad. If it's $30, we have a problem. So hopefully we can remember to talk about that in the future.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Well, that I don't have any other games. I don't know, Anthony or Chris, do you have any other games you want to talk about?
I have one to mention real quick. VR Sports Challenge. I think we might have talked about this one other time, but I've been playing this a lot lately, and it's because when I have my Rift on and I have my touch controllers and stuff, it works so nice and smooth. It's a nice, fun game to play for like a burst of like 25 minutes. I'm typically, when I go into it, I'll go into the basketball mode, and the basketball mode, like I was telling somebody else about it, and they're like, or maybe it was you, Steve, you were saying the dribbling, or no, it was somebody else. I was talking to somebody else about it, and they're like, yeah, but the dribbling, I don't like. Okay, so the dribbling doesn't work very well. But if you just, like, when you're doing the basketball thing, you're like holding the ball, and there's different players, you can pass it to them, they get open, and the defenders come up, and you try to shoot a three-pointer, or you try to like alley-oop it to somebody. And you're not really playing the real game of basketball, but they allow you to play these certain scenarios within the game, and it actually works really well. And the more I've been playing it, I've gotten to a point now where the defenders will try to steal the ball. They'll block it and stuff. In the very beginning, I was just making three-pointer, alley-oop after alley-oop. Now the defense is starting to step it up and get a little bit better. There's also, of course, football, there's hockey, and then if you earn a certain number of points, you can unlock various bonus games, and one of the bonus games I've unlocked is the Home Run Derby. But all of it is really fun, really enjoyable. It's very arcadey. Like if you're a hardcore football person or hardcore basketball person, you might try some of the games and think, this isn't really a representation of this sport. But if you're more casual and you just want to have a little bit of fun, I just had a ton of fun with this.
No, we talked about this back when just you and I did an episode 2 or 3 episodes ago, and we just talked about nothing but games. So I don't have much else to add, but I'm curious that if you find that you're enjoying it a lot more now because you have a Rift and that it's better with the touch controllers.
Yeah, that's it for me 100%, because a lot of these games, it's almost like I got a brand new console. And see, I'm curious if Gary feels that way. I know he's had some problems with his Rift, but I've had this huge library of Rift games, but I've been playing them all on the Vive, and some of them translate better than others. And Sports Challenge is just having that nice controller, and then just everything. When you're playing on Oculus, sometimes things just, like, you click on buttons and things just load up better. I don't know. I feel like there's always a little bit of jankiness when you're not on the actual platform.
Yeah, there is. I think that's very true, and I think Oculus is kind of being almost like the Apple of VR, in the sense that they are they have their walled garden, of course, but because of that, they're able to control the experience a little more. I think it tends to be a touch more reliable. I don't have as many crashes and glitches using my Rift on Oculus Home as I do using either my Rift or my Vive in Steam VR. So, you know, I think that's there. And in Steam is, of course, this bigger beast, and it has to support so many different headsets. So I understand why it would have possibly more glitches. I want to get it over to Gary so he can talk about his impressions of being a new Rift owner coming from the Vive. Anthony and the rest of us, we can also kind of comment on our takes, because we all now have Vives and Rifts. But I did forget a game before we do that, and I want to talk about it. I think I may be the only person that played it, but it's Invoker. Yet another early access game that we got keys for on Steam. And this one surprised me. It really surprised me because I didn't know squat about it. I didn't see anything in terms of promotion, like on Reddit or anything really talking about it. So this one just went right over my head. But it is a wizardry dueling player versus player or player versus computer for training game. I guess it's a lot like Unspoken at a high level in that sense, but what this is, it's a little more cartoony. It's complicated and simple at the same time. Graphically, it feels real close to Vanishing Realms, and a lot of the environments, and it looks good. I like that look a lot. And so what it is you'll play just a bunch of short matches. You can choose one of 4 wizards or mages, and there's a fire one, an ice one, a wind one, and I guess a earth or dirt. I haven't used that one yet, so I'm not entirely sure what its element base is, but it's green, whatever that could be. And you stand facing the other wizard in battle. And in your right hand, you throw what really just amounts to a fireball. That's it. Like all the 3 that I've played, it's just been a different colored fireball, so to speak. But what does different is you have to dodge. So the other enemy is throwing the same things back at you. But then after you've thrown a fireball with your other hand or with your now free hand, you can hold the trigger and you create these patterns. Like you'll draw out a triangle and or other shapes, other gestures, and what it'll do is it'll modify that fireball sort of you can do a split spell and it'll split into 2, or you do a bolt spell and it'll kind of stop and hover for a second, and then it'll like shoot like a beam, like a bolt straight towards towards your enemy. So you have these gestures, these spells that you're trying to throw mid-battle after you've already thrown a fireball, while trying to dodge the other person's fireball, whom is also can cast the same spells and modify their fireballs. And you're trying to manage mana. In order to do certain spells, like a bolt, for example, requires 3 mana points, and you start off with so many mana points, I can't remember, and certain things within battle causes you to get more mana points, like you can hit these crystals, or just throwing a fireball to the other end of the battle place, the other end of the map will cause you to get a mana point. So when I said that it's very simple and complicated at the same time, it's just that, like, at its core, it's very simple. You stand on one end of a hallway and you throw fireballs at another person. That's easy. It's simple, but it gets complicated in the micromanagement that you're trying to craft these spells while dodging, while looking at your mana and doing all these other things. So it was it was a pleasant surprise, and the game is it launched this week, so it's out. I do believe it's in early access. I don't have the store page up, but it's on sale now for either $7.99 or $8.99, down from its regular price of $15. This has full online multiplayer with voice chat. It's a game that you can get a lot of mileage from, and I'm really recommending everybody check it out, because it's very polished and just fun. There's nothing so overwhelmingly amazing. It's not, like we talked about Lone Echo, it's not as grand as Lone Echo is in that sense, but it's fitting inside of its space, and it does everything that it's aiming to do really good.
Can you do a single player, or you have to be against another person?
No, you have full tutorials. There's also like this boss battle where you fight this giant thing in a dungeon type setting. So yeah, you can do full single player. It has different levels. I think an apprentice, a mage, and basically easy, medium, and hard. And it's pretty deep in that sense. But really, that's what the true value, though, in this game, I think, is using that single player experience to get your training, and then going online and playing with people. I think ultimately that's how you're going to get the appropriate mileage out of this game. I haven't played it online too much myself, because I have so much other crap to play and everything. But for anyone listening to the show, like if you play Pavlov and Onward, and that's your thing, I think you can definitely include this game into your rotation of things that you can play online. And I know the Unspoken, over on the other side with the Oculus people, is a very popular game that's kind of carved out its niche audience. And I think this could do something similar. So let's go ahead. Gary, you got a new Rift. You're a Rift owner. Let's give us the 411 on your experience.
Well, I'll tell you what, because I mean, this show's going a bit long now, but what I'll do, and part of it is because I want to get into this a little bit more next week. I did have some problems with my Rift. I bought it, got it delivered on Friday, and I had some initial tracking problems, got those sorted out. It's fine. You know, I was being very critical of almost everything about the Rift. I was being very critical of right from the beginning because I wanted to compare it to the Vive. I'm coming from a Vive and I'm trying to compare the two as you naturally would. So I was holding the touch controllers up once I got it set up, and I was sort of very, very carefully going around and seeing how the tracking was, seeing if I got any slight dips or any judder or anything like that. And when I originally set it up with a 2-sensor 360 setup, I did have some problems, but I went to front facing, and I'll probably be getting another sensor in order to get sort of 360, the 3-sensor 360 room scale setup. Now, tracking is fine, you know, front facing cameras is fine. But the reason I want to reserve judgment on this and maybe get into it a little bit more next week and just keep this very brief is because I'm not too sure if there was something wrong with my headset. I had some world tilt, and, you know, I don't know if anybody I speak to doesn't seem to have this, but there are some posts on Reddit and various websites where the world is tilted slightly, and this was happening for me occasionally. Sometimes it'd be fine, and if for long periods of time it would be fine. But then occasionally it'd tilt, and then it'd slowly get back to normal. Occasionally I'd be looking around, and it would actually suddenly just slant like this, and then immediately go back. I looked into this on the internet, and I saw that you could download this IMU calibration tool from Oculus. So I downloaded that, ran through that a few times, and that threw up. I didn't watch it. It takes about 10 minutes to run through. But the first time I did watch it go through, and it was throwing up errors. It did run through the entire calibration. It didn't stop, but I did get errors thrown up. Now, I'm just wondering if I've got a defective unit and that's causing me problems. In spite of that, so what I'm going to do anyway, just to cut a long story short, I'm going to send this back. I'm going to exchange it and get a new unit. So hopefully by next week, I can give some more well-rounded opinions of it. Aside from that, I do have other issues with it. I think the Rift is a great unit. It's a great price. The touch controllers are incredible. I wish I could. You know, I wish the Vive had something similar to the touch controllers. Presumably we'll get that with the Knuckles controllers. The headset itself is very comfortable, far more comfortable than the Vive. I know that there's a lot of people that talk about this, and some people prefer the Vive, some people prefer the Rift in terms of comfort. I'm fully on board in terms of comfort for the Rift. I think that sits great. I'll leave it there mainly because I want to get an actual unit that I know is operating properly before I make any comments about it. Really, I don't want to get into it too much because I feel like I'm basing my opinions on a faulty unit first of all, and I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, I you know, we don't. You've told me in private, you know, so I'll keep what you said in private, and we don't know for sure that it's faulty, but it could very well be faulty. And I really look forward to you getting another unit and finding out if it's just really for whatever reasons the way it is for you. And if there's anything you want to bring up, because anything I've mentioned about the Rift, I'm happy to discuss. It's not a big problem. So yeah. No, I found, like, when you were talking about, hey, you know, some of the things you said, I'm like, man, that's the exact opposite experience that I've had, because I find that I truly like the Rift in terms of what it does, more so than I do my Vive. And I understand that the big selling point for the Vive is the larger tracking space, but to me that's moot if you don't have a space that is bigger than what the Rift can do. So I think if you kind of neutralize that effect, like for Anthony, I think I would, because he's got a big space, I think I would probably lean more towards the Vive just to leverage that giant space that he has. But for me, like I think I prefer the Rift, and I know we're getting into polarizing and very types of commentary that will either make people smile or make people get pissed off and hit the unsubscribe button or something. But it's true. It's truly my thoughts. Like, you know, I really like the Rift. I like what it's doing. It's more comfortable on my head. I think it looks better. The integrated audio is nice. And, you know, I hear a lot of people say that, well, the Vive is the premium experience. And I always think, well, is it? Like, these two headsets are so close. Like, compared to the PlayStation VR, I would say, yeah, the Vive is the premium experience, but I'd also say the Rift is the premium experience. But between these two, I don't think one is, without question, the more premium experience. However, I will say that one has the more premium price, and I think that's a huge problem. Going forward, I think HTC is in a very difficult spot because Oculus, we know they're owned by Facebook, so their bankroll is obviously different. But even if you take that out, let's pretend Oculus is just a company that isn't owned by Facebook. Oculus has a storefront, and it is making the hardware so that they can play the same game that Sony and Microsoft play with the consoles, and that they can sell it sort of as a loss leader and sort of make up the money from their storefront. HTC doesn't have that ability, and I think right now, like, if someone was to come to me and say, Steve, which headset should I buy? I'm without question recommending the Rift due to the price point, and because I think in the future, like, I'm at a point now, and I could be entirely wrong, and people will certainly flame me for being wrong if I end up being that. But I don't have a lot of confidence in HTC's future within high-end PC VR. We know the LG unit is coming. At this point, I'm almost curious if the Knuckles controllers won't be sold by Valve directly and come with a USB receiver or something, so that you don't even need a Vive for them. You know, I don't know any of that's happening, but it almost seems like Valve has distanced themselves somewhat from HTC. And so if I look at it as in a Vive versus the Rift, I'm not sure that's the story. I think it's more Steam versus Oculus, which is, you know, something we've said before. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I kind of, there's a little topic that I wanted to bring up earlier as almost like a topic of the show. But it's related to what you're talking about here. And Oculus, hold on one sec here. Sorry. Okay, so Oculus has this advantage that they're going to continue to have going forward that is really going to be interesting to see what Steam does, what Valve does, if anything, to deal with this. Because here's what Oculus has going for them is they now have this library of exclusives. And this library of exclusives is just going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to add additional games to this built-in library that they have going forward. And the only other company that is in a similar position to them from that standpoint is Sony. But Sony, being a console option and lower graphical abilities, not really having the kind of tracking, so kind of more limited gameplay, I don't know that Sony is going to be able to leverage the fact that Drive Club VR is an exclusive for them, or Rigs, or you know, some of the other games that they have going forward long term. But Oculus, on the other hand, think about 3 years from now, if VR really becomes a big thing, what's going to matter is the library. And Oculus has this library, man, and they keep adding to this library, and that's what they have that is going to bring people to them. And I'm kind of wondering, like, Valve, aren't some alarms going off in Valve's headquarters that, because if everybody goes to the Oculus store because they have this library, that's where the exclusives are. You're never going to play Lone Echo on Steam. You're never going to play Lone Echo on PlayStation Network. If you ever want to play Lone Echo, if you ever want to play, well, I mean, you can play it backdoor revive type of deal like that. But But your average Joe is not going to think about these hacks and stuff. They're going to go to that store. And when is Steam, when is Valve going to say, you know what, we got a problem here, because they keep building this exclusive library. Somebody explain to me what's going on here, because I think it's going to be a tremendous advantage for them.
I've been saying this for months now, and I think maybe I started thinking of it when I got a Rift, and now you're thinking about it because you just got your Rift, and it's a problem. Like when I look at what HTC and to an extent Valve have done from a hardware perspective, like I think they have the superior tracking, no question. I do think ultimately that's going to lose out to some sort of down the road inside out or simpler tracking system. But setting that aside, in today's market and for the foreseeable future, the Lighthouse system is without question the superior tracking. They have the pucks. Now, I haven't heard too much about the pucks lately, but the concept of the pucks is fantastic. We have wireless from the TP Cast, and although TP Cast says they have one in the works for Oculus, apparently there'll be different products, which sort of pisses me off. I'd like to buy one and it work with both my headsets. But we have all this hardware. It's like, in theory, I could buy the little Foveate rendering add-on. In theory, I could take my Vive and suit up and have pucks and wireless and have like just flat out the most awesome hardware capabilities. But there is no investment in the games. Like a puck is only something I can sit on my desk if I don't have something to play it with, and that's my biggest problem with the Steam VR side of things. And I only hope that once LG or once other manufacturers get involved, that maybe they find ways to fuel investments, because at the end of the day, the people aren't going to come just due to impressive hardware alone. They're going to come when they have games to play. And right now, I think, like you mentioned, I think Oculus is showing that, okay, we have this library now, but they're also signaling that they have a plan for continual investment. If I feel like right now, we're late July, I know that I have a major Oculus game coming out in August, September, October, November, and December. They've come out and said that. We know we have the Marvel Powers United game coming out next year. If I look and if I was a person that only played Steam VR games, so, you know, screw Facebook, screw Oculus, screw Walled Garden, and I only played Steam VR games, I know that Valve has 3 games that may come out between now and 2030. Who knows? We know nothing about those games. And I know that we have Fallout 4 and Doom VFR. That's it. So setting it from an investment standpoint, from a long-term projection, they're not sending me, a VR enthusiast, they're not sending me the right signals. And that concerns me, but you know, maybe I'm wrong. Chris, you haven't spoken in a while. Am I crazy?
No, I mean, Anthony and I talked about this whole HTC thing a little bit in the last show as well, but I mean, the only way I could see Oculus losing the advantage is if Valve's made their own headset, sold their own headset, and took a loss on it, or at least, you know, broke kind of even like what Oculus is doing. And I mean, I feel like Valve is kind of dropping the ball on funding VR titles. Like, I know if an indie comes up to them, they'll be like, oh yeah, we'll give you like 20,000, and then once you make that back in sales, you keep it. But that's not really funding big games. That's funding little indie games here and there. So I don't know, like they don't seem like they want to put their money where their mouth is for VR yet.
The thing is, as well, we've got to remember that Valve is not a VR company primarily. That VR is sort of a little sideline for them at the moment, and they're doing a lot for it. But Oculus, through Facebook, the Oculus branch of Facebook is a VR company. They're striving. That's their whole aim, to make VR succeed. I feel like Valve are sort of treating this as they want to get in, they want to see what VR is capable of. They've developed this fantastic technology, which, to be honest, you know, I don't have any brand loyalty. I don't care about HTC. I don't even really care about Valve, if I'm being honest. I don't care about Facebook or Oculus. I'll go wherever the best headset is. But HTC are the prices, we keep coming back to this, and the prices are too high. You want a new controller. These controllers break all the time. We hear it constantly. These controllers are not really, I mean, the trackpad especially, it costs you a lot of money to get a new controller. And just go back to your original point, Steve. If somebody was to come up and ask me which VR headset should I get, absolutely. At the moment, there's no, in my mind, there's no comparison at the moment. You get the Oculus because of the price. It's giving a very comparable experience to the Vive, and it's one that I think will bring a lot of people in. It's great that they're doing this price. I'm going to talk about my feelings about the Rift next week, but I want to spend time with it. I want to get a good experience, and like I say, it is a comparable experience to the Vive. Any problems I have with the Rift are very, very subtle. They're very minor, but they're there. So, that's a little teaser for next week.
I just want to go back to the Valve thing because, Valve VR is a minor thing for them, but VR is a defensive play for all of these companies. None of these companies can afford to be on the outside looking in. They can't afford to be like 6-7 years behind some other company that is freaking off to the races and they win this VR crown. None of these companies can afford to do that. Yet, if you look at Oculus, now they've spent a ton of money. They paid $3 billion to get Oculus and to have their employees for like an extra time period or whatever. And then so $3 billion, but then they're pouring all this money. I mean, is it another $2 billion that they're pouring into software over how many years? I don't know what the total is, but their total investment in VR is crazy. And they're getting a benefit now. I'm starting to see what their theory is with this because they're stacking game on top of game. And every month, another game stacks. What's stacking over on the other side? Nothing. Okay, so Steam, now here's the Valve person would come and say, well, yeah, that's great. Okay, they got all these exclusives, but somebody can sign into Steam and they're going to be playing a ton of games on Steam. We have thousands of games. We've got a way bigger library than they do. Sure, they have some of these specially funded games, but guess what? People can play those specially funded games with a little hack, blah, blah, blah. But what I'm talking about is like 2-3 years from now, when VR goes mainstream and your average Joe Schmo from Walmart is thinking about buying a VR headset, they're not going to think about hacks. They're going to think about what store do I go to that has a freaking crazy ass library of games that just go down the list. And this is a threat. It's a threat to VR in general because I don't want to see one company dominate VR. That's not good for VR long term. Valve is going to just give up VR and be like, okay, fine. Oculus, you put $5 billion into this. You bought the industry. The industry is yours. Go ahead, have fun. You got it, because they have that shit on lock right now. Valve, I don't understand how it's going to happen. This is a problem for me.
You have you have this not an awakening, but you like it's kind of almost like a little bit of trepidation, like it's it bothers you because long term, it's not good for there to be a lack of competition. And the one thing that I hope is that this motivates Valve to change gears and get something out there, because I want Valve to have a strong presence. Ultimately, I'm greedy SOB, and I want more software. I want more games to play, more super high production quality games, and competition is the biggest motivator, but so far competition doesn't seem to be doing too much. Now we'd argue that it went the other way, right? Like, so if we rewind a year and in a couple months, there was no question by the Vive. The Oculus had one sensor and no motion controllers, and it seems like the success of the Vive that snuck up. And despite all of the noise that Oculus made, Oculus was like the brand for VR. Like South Park, like they said, "Hey, I got an Oculus," or whatever they'd say, and people associated the term Oculus with VR. But yet, kind of out of nowhere, this HTC Vive shoots in, and really takes its lunch because it has room scale, which is a word that's marketing and bothers me now. PlayStation VR has room scale, just very small one. Like room scale is positional tracking. But anyways, that's a side tangent. I hate when people say, well, Vive has room scale. Well, they all have room scale. It's just the Vive has the best tracking solution in the biggest space. But the Vive came in and had that ability, and the Rift didn't. And Oculus responded. I assume the Touch was probably in development prior to the Rift and the Vive releasing, but I have to assume that the Vive eating Oculus's lunch at launch motivated them to put Touch and get it out there and get it out to the degree that they did. Now that Oculus has flipped the script, they are half the price, and that includes headphones, that includes touch controllers, that includes a decent software library. HTC and Valve haven't responded on the other end. And that's what I thought we'd see. I thought we'd see them come out and say, oh man, well, here's 5 games you get. Here's this, here's that. The deluxe audio strap. We're going to now bundle that. Oh, you bought a Vive. We saw you activated on your account in 2016. Well, you're going to get the Knuckles controllers for free. I thought they'd do something. Maybe not Knuckles for free, but I thought they'd do something. And so far they haven't. They've just kept mostly quiet. So, tangent off. I've been going for a while on this. It's kind of been something I've been waiting to get to, because it's kind of like the biggest discussion within VR, I think, right now. All right, you guys have anything else? Everyone's on mute and
I could
awkward
talk
silence.
For another hour on this, but I know Gary is like, dude, when is this show going to be over?
I think we've got to call it there. It's been going over 2 hours this week, so yeah, we'll get.
Are we really?
Yeah, I think we'll get into this a little bit more next week.
Okay, well, let's get into the housekeeping. Send us some likes on YouTube and on iTunes. That's what I meant to say. We need reviews on iTunes. We need likes on YouTube. We need all that stuff because it helps us to get games and to be able to talk to you guys and do the show. That it's more helpful than you understand probably, and it's why we ask for it, and it's why everyone like us doing shows and stuff asks for it. It's just something that we need. So we'll see you next time. Later.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.